everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and right over there is Nikki Kinzer.
Well, hello, Pete Wright.
Hello, Nikki Kinzer. It's a fine day today.
It's a beautiful fall day here in Oregon.
It is, and after a really crummy last week and a rainy Halloween, and it's nice to have a little break, as short as it is. I will suck it in. We are continuing our theme here around workplace and ADHD, and today we're talking about strengths and core strengths and how to maximize those strengths at work. Before we do that, head over to takecontroladhd.com to get to know us a little bit better. Listen to the show right there on the website. You can subscribe to the mailing list, pretty please, and you'll get the latest episode each time it goes live. You can always connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at Take Control ADHD, or call us 503-664-4ADD. Get your voice and your thoughts and your questions on this very show. All right, Nikki, work and ADHD and core strengths. Now, we've talked about core strengths, I think, before, but it's been a long time and not at work.
Yes, it has been a while. And but before I get into that, I have to share an update on Evernote.
Oh, well, by all means.
I know, right? So you and I had the pleasure of working with one of my clients on helping her understand and set up her Evernote, right?
That was so much fun.
It was awesome. I loved it. And of course, as I'm listening to you talk, I'm learning new things. And, you know, we've always talked about how I don't use tags, and you're a huge believer in tags. And in the Evernote article, the writer even says they have this kind of disagreement, or, they use this a little bit differently, right? Well,
Suddenly the internet makes our tag disagreement epic Kardashian level.
It is. It's gone viral.
Evernote spat.
We disagree on something. But I got to say, I've gone to the other side.
Really?
I'm kind of liking tags.
Do tell me, what has your experience been? How have you been playing with tags?
Well, I'm still far, far away from where I want to be, because here I've used Evernote for years, right? And so I've never used tags. In fact, when I went
a system,
back,
right?
Yeah. And when I went back in to look at what tags I even had, it was like, they were old tags. Like, they don't mean anything to me now at all. So I deleted them all, and I'm starting over. And so there is a process. It's going to take me some time to kind of get caught up in this whole process. But I'll tell you what clicked is when you were talking about, you were basically talking about how to find things with the tag and how much easier it is to just do that with the search button than it is to go to the notebook and actually scroll down and look for the article or look for whatever it is that you're looking for. And where that really clicked for me is that I do a lot of research. I do a lot of studying around ADHD. I want to, be up to date with what's happening in the news and current information. And so I clip a lot of these things from the internet. And I thought, okay, this is how this is going to help me, is that instead of having a notebook for all time management things, I can just tag these things and get more specific if I need to, like time management, morning routines, or time management, getting to work on time, right? Like I could be a little more specific. And that's where it really clicked for me, is that instead of wasting my time trying to figure out, okay, where did I save this? Is it under this? Is it under that? And trying to find it, or doing a word search and being completely off because I'm not doing the right word search. Yeah. I've decided to do tags. So I'm going to try this out. Thank you, Pete, right?
Well, you're very welcome. And I think what you're getting at, and one of the things we helped your client uncover, which I think was really great for her too, she's a writer, and she wanted to be able to find and filter the work that she was doing. The thing about tags, and this is what I think people forget, when you drop a note in a folder, or in Evernote's case, a notebook, or a binder, that note lives in that binder, right? It can only live in one place, but it can live in multiple tag sets. So you can actually have a story in Evernote that is tagged as fiction, or as Jack, or as, Imogene, your characters in that story, and you can find them by their character tag or by location tag or by whatever. It can live in any number of tags, but it only has one binder, and that might be, writing, whatever it is, but then I think is the real benefit and allows real flexibility. And in this writer's case, you also can have tags around workflow, like draft, revision 1, revision 2, and then with one click, you can filter to see just how many stories you have that you're working on that are all in revision 2 stage. Or all in, ready for submission stage, and as you add and remove tags from notes, makes it really easy to work through the research and development process. So I'm so glad to hear you have come around.
Yes, I have. So now, one of my projects is to redo my Evernote, which I'm just doing 10 minutes a day.
10 minutes a day. It's all it takes.
I'm breaking it down. I'm doing 10 minutes a day until I get it to the point where I need, where I want it. But yes,
10 minutes a day for the next 10,000 years.
Yeah, it's going to be a while. I also liked your idea of having an archival file. So I've been doing that too, where I'm putting all the stuff into archive, so that I don't have to see all the notebooks, because that gets so cluttery when all you're seeing is a bunch of stuff you don't even need. So I'm just going to have one notebook, archive, and throw everything in there. So that's been helping too.
Excellent. So anyway, well, I'm so glad to hear it. Way to go.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Well, back to our topic at hand today. We're back at this workplace and ADHD thing, and finding your strengths at work.
This is a positive episode. We're going to talk about strengths. We're not going to talk about weaknesses or challenges.
No. No. I'm feeling stronger already.
Are you? Good.
Oh, yeah.
But what's interesting is when you ask somebody, what do you think your strengths are? Now, this is obviously a very common question in an interview, right? Because people want to know what your strengths are. People want to know what your weaknesses are. But even as a coach, when I'm talking to people and I'm trying to figure out, how I can help them with coaching, it's very easy for them to talk about what's challenging them and all of that. But then when you ask them that question of what are your strengths, what are the good things about ADHD, some people will have immediate answers, but then there's others that really don't know. They have a really hard time answering that question. And that's what I want to talk about. Like, that's where I want this to go, is I want to help people become a little bit more clear about what their strengths are and then how to highlight them, whether that's in an interview, in the workplace, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that, part of it starts back in the imposter syndrome conversation that we had just a few weeks ago, which is, it's hard to define what your strengths are because you likely feel some level of shame around them.
Right. Well, and I'm going to talk about this in just a second, but I'm going to bring it up now because it just is fitting. It's comparing yourself to other people.
Yeah,
so
right.
It's, you may feel like, well, this is a strength, but gosh, I don't do it as well as the other person. So I guess I'm not really doing it that well.
Yeah, right.
So you kind of undermine, your own achievement just because you're comparing it to somebody else. And that's not fair.
And we probably spend a lot more time thinking about our weaknesses than we do our strengths anyway.
Oh my gosh, we are our worst critics.
We're our worst critics. So where do you start? How do you go about identifying and really focusing on your own strengths?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to identify them. And I know that I laugh because it's like, here we are just talking about how we don't know how to. Yeah. But you have to figure it out. You have to figure out how to identify your strengths. First thing I'm going to say is, brainstorm on a piece of paper everything that comes to your mind. So do think about, okay, this is a time that I've been proud of myself. This is, I'm really good at this. I'm good at that. Whatever it is, brainstorm it, put it on a piece of paper. Now, this next idea I love is, and it's so helpful. I've done it, and it's so, it makes you feel good, but it's also just really interesting, is to ask other people who know you in different areas of your life to tell you what they believe your strengths are. So you could ask a coworker, you could ask your boss, you could ask your spouse, you could ask your best friend, a neighbor, anybody that you trust, obviously, but in different areas of your life, and ask them, hey, I'm just kind of working on this little exercise here. Do you mind doing this? And I think for the people that you really do trust, ask them to be very specific specific about why they think this is your strength? Can they give you an example? Can they share with you a story? And be very specific about why they think this of you. And it's really interesting when you get that feedback, and it does feel good. I mean, there's no doubt about it to see that you're, making this kind of impression on someone.
I really want to just jump on the fact that you said, ask people to tell you a story, because people think in stories, right? As sort of human creatures, they're so much more natural for them to turn around and say, well, there was this one time when you did this one thing, and to give you an actual example of not just what the experience was, but how other people felt about it, that witnessed it. It's really useful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And even with that, I would say document what you're hearing or save the story that they're giving you, because it's always good to go back to, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Other thing you can do are these assessment tests. Two of my favorite ones. The first one is the VIA Institute on Character. It's like a character strength test that you can do. It's a free survey. You answer some questions, you get the results immediately. And it is really interesting to see how close it matches up to what you think, right? And you can also compare it to what other people are saying about you. And then another assessment you can do is the strengthstest.com. And it's the same kind of thing. You go through the survey and you get these results. And so again, it's just giving you kind of another platform or another way of thinking of what your strengths might be, or another way of getting to them.
What do the results look like? Like, what does it tell you when you've taken one of these tests?
Gosh, Pete, I don't have that information in front of me. It's been a while since I took the VIA character ones, but I know it's in categories where it's like compassion and, honesty. It's like these definite values of what's most important to you and how you thought, like it's kind of prioritized, like 1 through 5. And I think what the value is of looking at that is, is honesty. Does that make sense? That's like that integrity piece is your number one value, like, or whatever else there might be. And it's escaping my mind on what they are now. But that's really, I think, just to see how close it matches. Because most of the time people are going to agree and say, yeah, that really makes sense. But, you never know. You may not agree. Right. And that's okay too. I mean, these are not like proven assessment tests that this is the way it is. You look at them or you analyze them the way you want to. Okay. So say you're still a little unsure, right? Like you're still not getting there. The other thing to kind of think about is, when do you feel most excited about something? When are you motivated and inspired about doing something? And these are the things that you kind of want to pay attention to, because you're portraying some kind of strength here. Especially if you're proud of yourself or you feel really good about something. Maybe you just completed a phone call that you, have been avoiding, and that's something you're really proud of yourself. Well, you know what? A character strength or a strength there could be perseverance. You didn't give up, persistence. It's like, okay, you kept going back to the to-do list and you did it. I mean, these are the things that people aren't always seeing about themselves, right? I mean, they're only focusing that it's taken me 2 weeks to make the call, but you know what? You made the call, and that's the strength that we want to acknowledge. And again, I'm going to go back to documenting these things, using a success journal. We've talked about that before. So when you're getting feedback from people, when you are feeling really good about a situation, write those things down, keep them in, some kind of file or something to go back to, because memories are going to fail, and you're going to go, there's going to be times where you're going to go down that rabbit hole of feeling bad or just having a really bad day. And if you can go back to this and look at it, I mean, it's going to immediately lift your spirits, because you're going to be like, hey, this is, things are okay. It's not so bad. I'm going to get through the day.
Absolutely. Clip every email you get from somebody that says something nice to you. It's fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. And we already mentioned this, but this is where I was going to talk about the comparing yourself. Don't compare yourself to others. Just focus on you. You can be proud of yourself for something that, it doesn't matter how anybody else does it. If you did it and you're proud of yourself, that's good enough. Put it in put it in the success journal. And that comparison factor is definitely a self-sabotager. So we want to stay away from that. And then once you kind of gathered all of the information, again, kind of going back to that success journal, but being a little bit more formal about it, is kind of writing out more of a detailed profile of who you are, what your strengths are, when you feel like you are at your best, and giving yourself situations and specific scenarios of where you feel like you performed at your best, or you really did something nice for someone, or whatever it is. And again, no challenges or negativity is allowed in this profile. This is all really good stuff about you. And this is what you can kind of refer back to, especially if you're going into a job interview, or you're just going into a situation that you have some anxiety around and you just need to be reminded. You can kind of go back to these things. So
sure.
That's sort of kind of the step-by-step process of, I think, identifying what your strengths are, but also now what do you do with it? How do you capture it so that you can look back at it later? Now, a couple of things within the workplace. We did touch this, or we talked about this at the last show about picking the right job at the very end of the podcast. We talked about that. And, I think that this is still important, that when you're interviewing at a new potential employer, that you still do as much interviewing to them as they do to you. So I want you to ask questions. I want you to find out if it's a good fit for you. Is this a job that is going to interest you? Does it match your strengths? What is the work environment like? And as you suggested last week, talk to someone who already works there and get a really good idea of what it's like before you accept the job, because that's a lot of that prevention of just making sure you have the right job to match your strengths and whatnot.
Once you're already at work, right, and you have these strengths, and you kind of have a good sense of what you're good at there, and as much as we don't want to talk about kind of the negativity of sort of living with ADHD that can come with it, right, the self-judgment and those kinds of things, there are still like general behavioral issues that you've got to compensate for with ADHD. And so I think there is something about like what happens when you find you're unable to focus on people that are talking to you in a meeting scenario. What happens when you are really struggling to focus day after day, but come in on a weekend and work for 18 hours like that? Like, how do you set those up and sort of reframe those kinds of behaviors as strengths in the eyes of those you work with, so that you can continue improving your reputation?
Right. Well, I think that also goes along the lines of what we talked about last week too, on whether or not do we tell the employer what's going on. And I think that, depending on the situation, I go back to that. I work best in this situation. I will do my best work if I can have it set up this way, or if I can have this available to me, and not even necessarily putting any attention to the reason why you need that, or the reason that you work best in that, but just really highlighting more of, this is going to I'm going to do my best work for you. If I can just have these little things done.
It's interesting. Like just as an example, it occurs to me that sometimes I'm not aware of what I am doing as I am working. And right now I'm very conscious of it because we're talking about it. But I realize that, one of the reasons that I work at a stand-up desk, and one of the reasons that I appreciate not having the camera on while I'm podcasting, is because while you're talking, I am literally walking in circles. Like I am doing deep knee bends. I am like
I'm surprised you're not out of breath.
Yeah, no, it comes with many years of practice, but I have to move. I have to move. If I don't move, then you hear chairs squeaking, you hear it. Like, that is an accommodation that I had to make for my work, and made that accommodation as a result of getting myself out of a workplace that was not flexible in that area. Right. Everywhere, every office that I've ever had giant windows. It was something where everybody was looking at you in a fishbowl, and it was there's a lot of even as a manager, as a leader in the organization, it can be very difficult to focus. And when you don't have for me, in my case, when I didn't have the sort of freedom, the flexibility to act act the way my body made me act in order to keep my head on straight.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So. Well, and it's interesting because the last coaching group that I had, and we were talking about a lot of these issues, and one of the subjects did come up if what if they're not understanding, and what if they're not willing to do the accommodations, and they're not accepting, and things like that. And somebody from the group, another member, actually chimed in and said, I think at that point you have to decide, is this the right employer for you? And maybe that's not the employer that you want to work for if they're not going to accept you for who you are.
Yeah.
And I think that that's very true. Just in this situation, you don't have to highlight the reason why you want a stand-up desk, but this is just how you work best. And this is what you would really like to have. And if they can accommodate that and make that work for you, that's great. And if they're going to just, flat out say, no, or no to this, or no to that, or no to this, and they're not understanding, and you feel like you're being discriminated against, then, it probably isn't the right environment. And that's Absolutely. Going back to, from prevention, from the very start, trying to figure out what kind of work environment you're going into. But you don't always know. I mean, that's the thing, is that you're making an educated guess at the beginning, but not until you really are in it do you know for sure. So you still may take the job and then still kind of feel that way at some point. But
and I know, often you don't have the choice because of where you are in your career. If you're fresh out of college, or and sometimes you just have to take the job you have to take. But these accommodations, being able to stand and work so that you can move around or have fidgets, these are the things that sort of fill your tank and allow you to, give more attention when you have to sit in on a meeting, where you have to be quiet,
Yeah.
It gives you fuel for the tank to not send impulsive emails, to not, act out in these ways that other people may not understand. So I think that's a really important balance. And
I got to share some advice that my mom gave me a long time ago, right? Moms always know best. And this has really stuck with me. Is I remember, and I don't know if it was around college or maybe when I graduated, but she was saying to me, a job is just a job. If you don't like your job, if you aren't enjoying it, then you just get a different one.
Yeah.
And that, and it's such simple advice. But it's so true. If you really just don't like the people you're working with, you don't like what you're doing day in and day out, then you know what? Life's too short. Just get a different job.
Yeah. There are people who can dissociate that, oh, it's just a job. And at 5:00, I'm so done. And then I get to be who I am. But from 8 to 5, I go ahead and do this in order to have that. I was never able to dissociate myself from the work that I was doing. For me, the job was always my stamp on the world. And even as kind of inconsequential as the job may have been, this is how I was making a mark. And so it had to be the right job. And if it wasn't the right job, man, I got depressed. This was when I was younger and I didn't have the sort of intestinal fortitude to walk in and say, I need a different job because mom said so. And she was right. It was, I am miserable. How do I suffer my way through it? Really, it is just a job. It's just
and don't be
job.
Miserable. Don't be miserable. That was her point. Don't settle.
Yeah.
If it's not good enough, then you find something that is. So you are passionate. That's right. Absolutely.
I love it. I love it.
Okay, so this does lead to this question because I just got this email a day ago, and she asked. This is from Heidi, and she asked, "How do I balance quirky ADHD and professionalism?"
I love that. I feel like I didn't even read down that far in our notes here, and then I feel like I just talked about it.
I know. Well, and that's why I told her when I emailed her back, I said, thank you so much for the question, because in my newsletter this week, I said, if you guys have a question about workplace and ADHD, send them in, let me know what they are. And, so I thanked her for sending this. And I thought, this is, and I told her this, I said, this is going to be a great add-on to the show that we're doing, because the quirky ADHD can certainly be a strength. It can certainly be a superpower. And, that's what I want to how I want to approach it. But Pete, before I talk about it, what are your first thoughts when you saw that?
Well, quirky is such a charming word to me. When I hear it, it's very positive and very sort of uplifting and charming, and it's very Zooey Deschanel, you know. I mean, it's like she just exudes this kind of like I'm quirky. I may have some traits that you don't understand, but I'm so charming, you'll love me anyway.
Yes, I'm positive.
Right. It's super positive, and so I think of it like this is an opportunity. If you really have quirky, if you really have quirk down, then that's enormously empowering. It should be enormously empowering, because one of the things that comes with quirkiness is the ability to let troubles sort of fall off of your back, you know, water off a duck's back, right? Because you know, it's very sort of Portlandia to me, and I think that this goes hand in hand with whether or not you sort of come out as ADHD at work, is your ability to be sort of embracing of the quirk, and to say, this is who I am, and I need to share with you, the people that I work with every day, this is who I am, and this is how my brain works, and I'm gonna do my best to share with you, you know, the things that will make me a better person to work with too. And here are some things that are a little bit challenging, but I also wear great hats. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. That's exactly how I see it too. And I think it's such an asset. It's such a wonderful personality to have in your work environment. You know, you don't want a bunch of stiff professional people that don't have an opinion or can't think outside of the box, or just, you know, appreciate status quo, and that's it. So, I mean, if you can give more, what an asset. And the only thing that I would say about the professionalism part is that, you know, obviously, whether you have ADHD or not, you always have to be a little bit careful if you're making a lot of jokes, and what kind of jokes are they, and could they potentially be offensive to people? But I'm not getting that from her. I mean, I don't know. It's just one question. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. My feeling is that if you have that character trait, embrace it. It's a huge strength. And I have a feeling that more people probably appreciate it than you know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I like ending there.
Yes. Great. But awesome. I have a challenge for people listening.
Oh, do.
So if you are one of those people that you can't just name off 5, you know, wonderful traits about you, then you need to go check out those assessments, talk to other people, make a profile for yourself, and do these things that we're talking about, because I think it's a great exercise. So, and
you know what else you should do? You should ask. You should @mention Nikki on Twitter, and with the hashtag my 5 ADHD traits, and list them out. 5 tweets. If you've ever struggled with this, share 5 great things about you. Work them up and share 5 great things with Nikki on Twitter.
Oh, I love that.
Take control, ADHD.
That's right. The Twitter.
Go to the Twitter.
Go to the Twitter.
That's all. That's all we've got, right? I think we're officially.
I think we're getting quirky now.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Yeah. It's Friday. It's end of the week.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to this show. We sure appreciate it, and thank you, as always, Nikki Kinzer. On behalf of the good Nikki, I am Pete Wright, and we will catch you next week right here on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.